I'm 28 now, and I've told this story maybe 3 times in my life. Every time I do, people ask why I didn't just leave sooner. The truth is, nothing felt wrong enough to justify leaving, until it suddenly did. I was 19 when it happened. I'd just finished my first semester of college and was back home for the summer. A neighbor 2 streets over asked if I could babysit her daughter Lily for a few hours on a Saturday night. I recognized the house immediately. Pale blue siding, corner lot, always quiet. I'd ridden my bike past it growing up. Lily was 7. Soft-spoken, polite. The type of kid who thanks you for pouring juice. Her mom walked me through the basics before she left. Pizza in the fridge, bedtime at 9:30. The only thing she emphasized twice was that Lily sometimes sleepwalked. If she comes out of her room, just gently guide her back, she said. Don't scare her, and don't try to wake her suddenly. That didn't seem like a big deal. The house itself was narrow but long. When you walked in, the living room was straight ahead. The kitchen was behind it. A hallway branched off to the right, with 2 bedrooms and a bathroom at the end. Lily's room was the first on the left. Her mom's was at the very end. The hallway light was one of those dim yellow bulbs that never fully brightened the space. Even at 7 p.m., it felt slightly darker than the rest of the house. The night started completely normal. We watched a movie in the living room, and Lily asked me random questions about college, like it was another planet. Around 9:15, I told her it was time to get ready for bed. She didn't argue. After I tucked her in, she asked me something that caught me off guard. If I come into your room tonight, she said quietly, don't talk to me. I smiled, thinking she was joking. Why? I asked. She stared at the ceiling instead of at me. Because if I answer you back, then it's not me. I laughed a little awkwardly and told her to get some sleep. I sat up on the couch in the living room instead of her mom's bedroom. I didn't feel comfortable sleeping in someone else's bed, so I figured I'd just stay up and scroll on my phone until her mom got back around midnight. By 10:30, the house was completely silent. No TV, no cars outside. Just that faint hum houses make when everything's off. Around 11, I heard a soft creak from the hallway. I looked up, expecting to see Lily wandering out half asleep, but no one came into the living room. A minute later, I heard it again. A slow, deliberate floorboard shift. Not the quick, uneven steps of a kid. Just one measured movement. I stood up and walked toward the hallway. The dim light was still on. Lily's bedroom door was open about halfway. I could see her nightlight glowing purple inside. Lily? I whispered. No response. I stepped closer and gently pushed her door open wider. She was in bed. Covers pulled up, facing the wall. I felt stupid for even checking. As I turned to go back to the living room, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Her mom's bedroom door, the one at the end of the hall, was open. It had been closed earlier. I was almost sure of it. I stood there staring at it, trying to remember if I had seen it open before. Maybe I hadn't paid attention. Then I heard a whisper. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear, but it came from the direction of the open room at the end of the hall. It sounded like someone softly saying, "Hey." I froze. My first thought was that Lily had gotten out of bed and was standing behind me. I turned quickly. She wasn't there. Her door was still open. I could see her small shape under the blankets. I felt my chest tighten. I told myself it was the house settling. Pipes, air vents, anything logical. Then I heard it again. Hey. This time, it was slightly louder, and it definitely came from her mom's room. I took 2 steps toward it before stopping. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe instinct. Maybe fear catching up with logic. The hallway suddenly felt too narrow. Lily? I called, louder now. From inside her bedroom, her small voice answered immediately. I'm in bed. That response, fast and clear, made my skin crawl. Because if she was in bed, then who had just whispered from the other room? I backed up slowly toward the living room, without turning my back to the hallway. I didn't want to see something standing in that doorway. I didn't want confirmation. That's when I heard quick footsteps. Not slow creaks, not house noises, actual steps. They moved from the end of the hall toward me. I ran. I don't even remember deciding to. I just sprinted into the living room and grabbed my phone off the couch. Before I could dial anything, Lily appeared at the hallway entrance. She wasn't crying. She wasn't sleepy. She was wide awake, and she looked confused. Why are you running? She asked. I stared at her, trying to figure out if she'd been the one in her mom's room somehow. But that was impossible. I would have seen her pass me. Did you just come out of your room? I asked. She shook her head slowly. No, I've been standing here. That made no sense. I would have seen her walk down the hallway. Unless she hadn't come from her bedroom. I forced myself to look past her, down the hallway again. Her mom's door at the end was now closed, completely closed. The light in the hallway flickered once, and that's when Lily grabbed my hand hard enough to hurt. There's someone behind you, she whispered. I didn't turn around. I didn't check. I grabbed her, opened the front door, and ran barefoot across the street, the only house with lights still on. A middle-aged couple answered, clearly confused. I told them someone was inside the house. That I'd heard a man's voice. They let us inside and called 911. From their front window, I could see Lily's house clearly. Nothing moved. No one ran out. No lights turned on. It looked completely normal. When the police arrived and cleared the house, they found the back door unlocked. The lock itself wasn't broken, just not latched all the way. They didn't find anyone inside. But one of the officers came back out holding something. It was Lily's purple nightlight, the one I'd seen glowing in her room. He asked if it had been in her mom's bedroom. I said no. He said they found it plugged into the outlet beside her mom's bed, still warm. Lily and I both slept at the neighbor's house that night. Her mom rushed home early and was shaken, but kept insisting. Maybe someone had tried the door and left when they heard us moving. Maybe. But I still think about two things. First, Lily telling me not to talk to her if she came into the room. And second, the footsteps. Because they didn't sound like someone sneaking. They sounded like someone who thought they already belonged there. I never babysat for that family again. And to this day, if I wake up at night and think I hear someone whisper, "Hey," from another room, I don't go check anymore. I was 22 when this happened, and I still check vents in every house I stay in. It wasn't some random job off a website. It was for my old high school math teacher, Mrs. Keller. I'd known her for years. She had twin boys, Ethan and Miles, both 9. I'd watched them a few times before without any issues. They lived in a newer development on the edge of town. Identical houses, wide driveways, no streetlights directly in front of the homes. Just one at the corner that barely reached their yard. Mrs. Keller and her husband were going to a fundraiser downtown and wouldn't be back until around midnight. She gave me the usual instructions: pizza money, bedtime at 10, and a reminder that the boys sometimes tried to prank babysitters. She said that last part with a laugh. They'll try to scare you, she said. Don't fall for it. I told her I wouldn't. That comment sat differently with me later. The house layout was simple. Front door into the living room, kitchen to the left, a staircase right by the entry that went straight up. The boys' room was at the end of the upstairs hallway, across from a small loft area with a desk and computer. The basement door was in the kitchen. That detail matters. The night started loud and chaotic, the way it usually did with them. They were competitive over everything. Who got the bigger slice of pizza? Who got the controller first? Who brushed their teeth faster? By 9:45 though, they were tired. I walked them upstairs, made sure they both actually got into bed, and turned off the overhead light. They had one of those blue LED nightlights plugged in near the closet. As I stepped into the hallway, Ethan called out, "If you hear knocking, don't answer it." I turned back and smirked. "Very funny. I'm serious," he said, but he was smiling. Mrs. Keller's words came back to me. They like to prank babysitters. "Go to sleep," I said, closing the door halfway. I went downstairs and turned on the TV low. Around 10:30, I heard what sounded like a dull thud. Not upstairs, below me. It came from the kitchen area. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was probably the ice maker in the freezer, or the house settling. Then I heard it again. A soft, rhythmic bump, like something lightly hitting wood. I stood up and walked into the kitchen. The basement door was closed. The sound came again, clearer this time. 3 slow knocks. From the other side of the basement door, my stomach tightened. The boys were upstairs. I'd just put them to bed. There was no reason anyone should be in the basement. I stared at the door, waiting for another sound. Silence. I actually laughed quietly at myself. This had to be the twins somehow. Maybe they snuck down earlier and were trying to mess with me. I opened the basement door quickly, half expecting one of them to jump out. The stairs descended into complete darkness. No light was on. "Okay, that's not funny," I called down. No response. The basement light switch was at the bottom of the stairs, which I immediately hated. I stood there debating whether I really needed to check. Before I could decide, I heard footsteps upstairs. Fast ones. I shut the basement door and moved toward the stairs. Ethan was standing at the top, wide awake. "Why are you opening the basement?" he asked. I felt irritation spike. "I thought you guys were trying to scare me." He looked genuinely confused. "We're in bed." Right on cue, Miles appeared behind him, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" Miles asked. I looked between them. "Were you downstairs?" They both shook their heads. Then Miles said something that made my throat go dry. "We thought you were." Apparently, they'd heard footsteps below them for the past 10 minutes. Heavy ones, moving back and forth. I felt that cold wave of realization hit. The kind where your brain is still trying to find a normal explanation, but your body already knows something's wrong. I told them to get back into their room and lock the door. They didn't argue this time. As I walked back into the kitchen, the basement door was slightly open. I was positive I had closed it. The dark gap between the door and the frame looked deeper than it should have. And then I heard it again. 3 knocks. But this time, they weren't on the door. They were on the wall. Inside the kitchen, behind the refrigerator, I actually stepped back. The knocking continued. Slow, deliberate, like someone mapping where we were standing. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 quietly while keeping my eyes on that wall. The operator picked up, and I started explaining when the basement door suddenly slammed shut on its own. The sound made me jump so hard, I dropped my phone. From upstairs, one of the twins screamed. Not a playful scream, a real one. I ran up the stairs 2 at a time. Both boys were standing in their doorway, pointing down the hallway toward the loft area. The small desk chair up there was spinning, slowly. No windows were open, no fans on. It wasn't spinning fast like someone had just shoved it. It was turning gently, smooth, like someone had just stood up from it. The attic access panel above the loft was slightly ajar. I hadn't noticed it before, and then we all heard it. A slow dragging sound above us, across the ceiling, moving from one end of the hallway to the other. The operator was still on the line downstairs, her voice faintly echoing from the kitchen floor. I grabbed both boys and rushed them into their bedroom, locking it behind us. The dragging continued for another 10 seconds, then stopped directly above the room. We could hear faint breathing through the ceiling vent. That's the moment I knew this wasn't random. Whoever was up there had been in the house long enough to know where everything was. Police arrived within minutes, though it felt much longer. We stayed locked inside until officers banged on the door and identified themselves. They searched the basement first. Nothing. Then they pulled down the attic ladder. There were clear impressions in the insulation, and food wrappers, old ones, water bottles. Someone had been staying up there, watching. The attic had a small vent that opened toward the backyard. It wasn't large, but apparently large enough. They never found him. Mrs. Keller cried when she got home. She kept saying she thought the noises the boys mentioned weeks ago were just old house sounds. I never babysat there again. And sometimes I still think about those 3 knocks. They weren't random. They felt like signals, like someone testing whether we were listening.